It's just fantastic. Captain's log, subdate 220308.6. At some point we're going to need newer cell colours, so that we can have a bit of a colour coordination with inmates and their respective crimes. And because the last thing we would really want here is for inmates to stand out, the nonces are getting neon pink cells. Welcome everyone to the Halls of Injustice. Today we welcome inmate number 118 to the ISO cubes. His name is Muhammad Ashfaq, and he will be spending a very long time here, because his crimes are pretty nasty, with the only silver lining being the victim of the crimes committed is still alive, free, and able to live a better life than he ever will. So what we're going to do is go through who he is, what he did, what happened when he was arrested, the investigation, trial, and law, concluding with the verdict, sentence, and my sentence. So who is Muhammad Ashfaq, aka inmate number 118? Not a clue is the short answer, and that's because not a single article tells us anything about who he is beyond the fact he's from Newham, and that he is 31 years old. While doing research for this video, the only person I could find called Muhammad Ashfaq was not the same person and is currently in India. That's not to say there aren't others, by the way, but more prominent individuals. This was the only one. So instead we're going to go to the crimes of Muhammad Ashfaq. And I'm going to apologize in advance if I get anything in this wrong. The timeline is a bit skewed, and the reason why is because every article I've linked as a source down below skips over certain details that other articles reference. The campaign of abuse subjected to the victim, who we will call Jane Doe for this video, by Muhammad Ashfaq, ran from January 2020 to May 2020. So yes, some of his crimes took place during lockdown, and that first lockdown was quite a dark time, a very quiet time. But if you know anything about a lot of the crimes we've covered this year so far, there does in fact appear to be a prevalent theme with lockdown and manipulative, coercive, abusive behaviour. During January and May 2020, Muhammad Ashfaq committed 11 offences at least against Jane Doe. These would include domestic violence and sexual violence. On April 3rd, 2020, Jane Doe initially reported one of these incidents to the police, in which Muhammad Ashfaq had assaulted her and held a rusty knife to her and then attempted to sexually assault her. As a consequence, he was charged with 2 offences, but he was bailed by the court. But even before that, Muhammad Ashfaq had sexually assaulted Jane Doe. She had told the police, and because the police are super good at what they do, i.e. nothing, Muhammad Ashfaq went to Jane Doe, further assaulted her, and threatened her, which forced her to withdraw the allegation. During other sexual assaults, Muhammad Ashfaq had held her down and recorded this, which one can surmise was solely done so he could use it against her to get her, Jane Doe that is, to do whatever Muhammad Ashfaq wanted. Now back to May the 5th, 2020, Muhammad Ashfaq had assaulted Jane Doe, who had also prevented her from leaving the house. She had managed to make her way into the street, but had no means of calling the police. Shortly after the police arrived, Muhammad Ashfaq was further charged and remanded into custody. It was at this point, upon him being remanded, that Jane Doe disclosed all of the earlier offences, including sexual assaults, to the police. Just to add a little additional context before we get to charges and UK law. When he had held a rusty knife to her on the 3rd of April 2020, he had threatened to kill her and himself. So with this context, we're now going to get to the offences and what the UK law says about each of them. In all articles that I have linked down below, not a single one explicitly states what the 11 charges he was facing are. But based on the story I have told you, we can work out what some of them are. On 2 occasions he sexually assaulted Jane Doe, therefore 2 counts of rape. He made a threat to kill, which is an offence against the person. We have attempted rape, We could also include the fact he recorded these incidents. And we have domestic abuse on multiple occasions. I'm sure there are more, but when we go with 11 offences, chances are there were in fact more. But these are the ones that they went with more than likely because they were more likely to get a guilty verdict and then a decent sentence, i.e. long term. So when you make a threat to kill another person, that typically falls under the Offences Against the Person Act, with threat to kill being defined as a person who without lawful excuse makes to another person a threat, intending that that other would fear it would be carried out. To kill that other or a third person shall be guilty of an offence and liable on conviction on indictment to imprisonment for a term not exceeding 10 years. For domestic abuse, we go to the Domestic Abuse Act of 2021, and for this video we're going to use the definition of what is domestic abuse. So part 1 of the law. This section defines domestic abuse for the purpose of this act. Behavior of a person A towards another person B is domestic abuse if A and B are aged 16 or over and are personally connected to each other, and the behavior is abusive. Behavior is abusive if it consists of any of the following: A. Physical or sexual abuse. B. Violent or threatening behavior. C. Controlling or coercive behavior. D. Economic abuse. E. Psychological, emotional, or other abuse. And it does not matter whether the behavior consists of a single incident or a course of conduct. The definition of personally connected is: A. They are or have been married to each other. B. They are or have been civil partners of each other. C. They have agreed to marry one another. D. They have entered into a civil partnership agreement. E. They are or have been in an intimate personal relationship with each other. F. They have or there have been a time when they have had a parental relationship in relation to the same child. For the sake of what has happened today, E is applicable to personally connected. There is further reference later on in Part 6 of this law for offences involving abusive or violent behaviour, which also has something I think might apply here for disclosure of private sexual photographs and films, more commonly known as revenge porn. Domestic abuse as a crime is a tricky area to sentence, because it is subjective based on what has transpired. For the charges of rape, we go to the Sexual Offences Act of 2003. Rape is defined as: a person A commits an offence if A. He intentionally penetrates the vagina, anus, or mouth of another person B with his penis. No. B. B does not consent to the penetration, and C. A does not reasonably believe that B consents. A person guilty of an offence under this section is liable on conviction on indictment to imprisonment for life. So with this information stored away, we're now going to go to the trial because there is some rather interesting information that came to light during it. That would be more notably the victim impact statement from Jane Doe. Jane Doe said, "I remember everything he's done and said to me, his actions, his voice. I get days where I wake up terrified. I have never felt like I do now. I am not fit enough to go back to work. It's just not something I'm ready to do. It will take time for me to build it back up. I just do not feel safe. I do not know how to go out there, be around males, have colleagues and stuff like that. I feel angry and disappointed. Sometimes I blame myself. When it's been really difficult for me and I felt like I can't carry on, come to court, give evidence, I've carried on because I don't want him to hurt someone else's daughter. Let me be the last person he ever touches. Nobody should experience what he has done to me." I figure because earlier I mentioned that Muhammad Ashfaq would be here for a long time, that simply skipping over the verdict would be beneficial to this story's progression. Muhammad Ashfaq, aka Inmate No. 118, found guilty of 11 offences against Jane Doe, was sentenced to 19 years in prison, where upon his release, he will then serve an additional 4 years on licence. Speaking after his sentencing, Detective Constable Jennifer Newman, who led the investigation against Muhammad Ashfaq, said, "Muhammad is a dangerous and manipulative man, and I have no doubt that were he not serving a custodial sentence, he would go on to commit similar offences against other women. Ashfaq subjected his partner to a number of violent physical attacks, but as she says, it is the emotional impact of this behaviour that she will continue to live with for a long time. The offending took place over a 4-month period, but her life has been turned upside down by what happened. She deserves a huge amount of credit, not only for reporting Ashfaq to police despite his threats about what would happen if she did so, but also for supporting the trial and providing key evidence which led to his conviction. This is despite a number of delays to the proceedings. Coronavirus. It is because of her bravery that he is behind bars, and we hope her actions encourage anyone else in an abusive relationship to come forward and speak to us. So what is our sentence here at the Halls of Injustice? 19 years is a lengthy term to serve. By the time he leaves, if he served all of it, he'd be 50. I think we need to increase the sentence. Rape is up to life. Well, he did 2 of those at least. 1 attempted, threat to kill, and domestic abuse. We'd like to stack the more severe sentences up. We'll make it 109 years. You're welcome. As we are done here, I would very much like to know what you all think, so please do let me know in the comments down below. Finally, I shall be streaming on Twitch tonight. If I don't see you there, I hope you have a fantastic day. Thank you all very much for listening. Ta-ta.